coming up. Right now, let's talk to Daniel Pryor, Head of Programmes at the Adam Smith Institute, because let's talk about something else off to the side of the old coronavirus. Firms are apparently going to be banned from advertising junk food, like sausage rolls, like fish fingers, online under some new plans. Daniel, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome.
Good afternoon. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well indeed. Thanks very much indeed. I mean, it's a massive sort of debate, this, isn't it? Junk food. What's junk food? Is it good food? I mean, I was talking to somebody earlier this morning saying, well, McDonald's are apparently going to be unveiling some new plant-based menus, which are going to be rolled out over 2021. They're going to have one particular day where they only serve plant food. Now, is that junk food because it's made by McDonald's, or is it not junk food because it's not junk food?
Well, the way that we currently define junk food is pretty crazy, to be perfectly honest. It covers everything from mustard, Marmite, ham and cheese to your posher stuff like olives and hummus and potato salad. And the way we do it is we call things high in fat, salt and sugar. And that's all well and good, but it means that any time the government tries to use this definition in any sort of ban like they're trying to do now, what we end up doing is banning a load of things that we're also trying to promote as exports for Britain in the global trade race. So it's a little bit kind of ham-fisted.
Well, it really is. And also, I mean, you know, there's loads of people in this country like banning things, you know, let's ban this, ban that, ban the other. You know, I mean, if you're online, one of the most annoying things that I have a problem with is some of the pop-up adverts that come up. But I don't actually pay very much attention to them. I just desperately try and get rid of them, which sometimes ends up with me, unfortunately, clicking on it if I'm doing it on a small screen, you know. So, I mean, I think if they're going to start talking about banning advertising, surely they should talk about some of the other stuff that gets advertised that you have no control over.
Oh, don't you worry. They're also talking about banning junk food ads on TV as well. They wouldn't miss a trick on that.
Yeah, I thought they already had, to be honest.
Well, they've started to launch consultations on extending some of the kind of watershed bans around advertising on TV. I mean, we did already ban junk food ads during children's programs all the way back in 2008, a very long time ago. And
that's worked well, hasn't it?
Well, it didn't change the childhood obesity rate at all. So yeah, not too great there. But I think this is kind of based on a misunderstanding of how advertising is supposed to work as well. The point that you mentioned, obviously most people just skip through their YouTube ads.
Yeah.
But for those that don't, the idea of advertising is to promote specific brands to people. It's not trying to kind of create new desires to have a pizza where you didn't have one before. It's saying choose, say, Domino's over Papa John's or vice versa. So it's for people who already want a pizza and they want to go with a specific brand.
Right.
And there's very good evidence.
And I was going to say the same in supermarkets. They want you to walk into a supermarket aisle, and if you're about to buy some fish fingers, you go, bing, oh, look, there's the bird's eye ones. I'll get those.
Right, that's a really good kind of example and parallel. You choose to go into that supermarket aisle because you want a particular product, but you're not sure whether you want this brand or a slightly different one. And the way we know this is that across various industries, including food and drink, there's very little relationship between how much advertisers spend and the overall size of the industry. There is some quite good evidence that advertising campaigns work for a specific product, but they don't seem to increase the amount people spend on a kind of product category. And the government's previous impact assessment suggested that these sort of measures would have virtually no impact in calorie consumption as well. But we've still seen, nonetheless, Boris jumping aboard the nanny-state train because he said personally he was a little bit too overweight. And I kind of worry what he'd do with our alcohol if he ends up getting a bad hangover one day.
Well, you do worry, don't you, that, I mean, I think people are more or less stopping the ridiculousness of saying that, well, of course, Boris Johnson's a libertarian at heart and he really doesn't want to do any of this. Really? You know, if he was really a libertarian at heart, he wouldn't even be contemplating any of this stuff, never mind, you know, taking his own experience and sort of, you know, multiplying it across the board to everybody else. You know, I don't want a prime minister that tells me what I should be doing and what I should be eating and how I should be living and how I should be exercising. You know, you can get lost.
Yeah, it's a real shame because I think we had some kind of promise, at least initially when Boris came in, that he wouldn't get caught up by this rather powerful public health machine that every single leader of this country seems to be caught up by. But it looks like he has been, and he's kind of fallen to a lot of this pressure. At the moment, this particular measure is just going to be in consultation stage. So there is a chance that we'll be able to fight it, and perhaps we won't get more nanny-statism coming in. But realistically, it's very difficult when pretty much every single nanny-state measure that's been proposed over the past 10 years or so had almost universal support from the government and people replying to those consultations.
Because when they talked about banning junk food from television ads, I remember there was a debate about what exactly it was, because a lot of the supermarkets, technically speaking, are advertising things which might be considered to be junk food. And part of, say, for example, a sort of Sunday roast might be considered junk food. And it just started to get ridiculous, didn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, you might remember the same issue when Transport for London tried to ban these type of ads on its own networks. It ended up banning its own ads and its own maps of London, and rather infamously an ad for Farm Drop, because that had eggs in it. And the company Farm Drop incidentally supported that ban, then realised they get caught up in it. So there's an awful lot of track record of us really screwing up when it comes to trying to even ban ads. Never mind whether they're actually successful or not, they end up catching things we don't want. So we need to sort out our definition of junk food, which is very much easier said than done. It's not easy to come up with a definition that kind of captures everything that you want. But also, more importantly, I think, look again at the evidence as to whether these actually work. And I'm of the opinion that they definitely do not.
No, exactly right. And also, slightly on a broader front, I'm very disturbed by the way that these kind of advisors start now advising. I mean, I've been talking to some people today who have had letters from various government departments telling them to stay in and not go out on the grounds that they are, extremely vulnerable, even though some of them are clearly not extremely vulnerable because the government have got it wrong. But also, this whole idea that, Boris Johnson appears yesterday to promote a vaccine, which has just been discovered that could be very helpful to the ending of this ridiculous lifestyle we're all having to live, only to then be very uninspired about it and to be very kind of, enthusiastic because he didn't want us to get carried away. I mean, it's like, what does he think we are, 5?
Yeah, it's a little bit kind of Victorian style, the way he's looking at things at the moment.
Yeah.
I mean, if he's focusing still now in the midst of a national lockdown, in the midst of case numbers rising, hospitalizations rising, an actual serious threat to public health, and instead the government's focusing on what we're putting into our bellies and what we might be watching on computer screens during a YouTube ad break, clearly they've got their priorities all wrong.
Yeah, I think that's very true, and I think we can all agree on that. Daniel, thanks very much indeed. Daniel Pryor, Head of Programmes at the Adam Smith Institute, of course. I mean, we don't need to keep being told what to do, when to do it, who to do it with, why we shouldn't be doing something, why we should be doing something, when we can do something, what we can do with things that we're not supposed to be doing anything with, who we can do things with. You know what I mean? Doesn't it just wind you up? Because it does me.